In a small village near Bobo Dioulasso, 13-year-old Fatimata Diallo was preparing for her wedding. Her groom, a man 30 years older, had already paid the bride price. Her mother wept quietly, her father remained stoic. It was tradition as old as the baobab trees. But outside the village, a storm was coming not of rain, but of revolution. News broke that same day, President Ibrahim Traoré had signed an executive decree outlawing child marriage in Burkina Faso, effective immediately. Enforcement teams were already moving into rural provinces. Soldiers not with guns, but with educators, social workers, and health professionals. Fatimata's wedding never happened. In the capital city, Ouagadougou, President Traoré held a national address. The broadcast cut across radio, television, and social media platforms simultaneously. Dressed in modest fatigues, standing before the national flag and a map of Africa marked by Sankar's quotes, he said, "A nation that marries off its daughters kills its future. From today, that future will be protected." The speech was met with thunderous applause in urban areas and quiet resistance in traditionalist strongholds, but the words marked a new era. The operation to enforce the decree was called Jamila, named after a fictionalized figure representing freedom. Led by women in the army, Operation Jamila used a multi-tiered approach. Rapid response task forces for at-risk girls, village-level sensitization meetings, deployment of mobile education units. For the first time in modern Burkina Faso history, a policy was being enforced with compassion instead of coercion. In Koudougou, a young girl named Asita was rescued hours before her forced marriage. She would later become the first recipient of the National Jamila Scholarship. Recognizing the need for voices, Traoré established the Girls' Parliament, an advisory body made up of girls aged 12 to 18 from every province. They met quarterly with ministers and the president himself. In one powerful session, a 14-year-old named Clarice from Dori asked the Minister of Education, "Why are girls asked to marry, but never asked to lead?" Traoré watched from the gallery. Her words would later be quoted in UN addresses and Pan-African symposia. Traoré often invoked the spirit of Thomas Sankara. He saw himself as a continuation of a dream long deferred. A new monument was erected in Ouagadougou, not of Traoré, but of a young girl holding a school book and breaking chains. The inscription, "Education is the sharpest spear." Foreign press asked, "Why girls first?" Traoré replied, "Because when you educate a girl, you transform a nation." Not all welcomed the reforms. Some religious leaders and village elders accused Traoré of betraying culture. In Djibo, leaflets denouncing the decree were distributed. An underground radio station aired counter-messages. Traoré responded not with arrests, but with dialogue. He visited Djibo personally, sat cross-legged under a tamarind tree, and listened. "Culture evolves," he said. "What was sacred before may now be harmful. Let us not preserve poison." By the end of his visit, several elders publicly pledged support. Mothers became the silent engine of the revolution. In cities and villages, networks of mothers formed to protect young girls. In Kaya, the Mothers' Accord was born, an oath signed by over 50,000 women pledging to uphold the end of child marriage. They marched in white headscarves, carrying signs that read, "My daughter is not your bride." Traoré launched the Pan-African Girls Scholarship Fund, seeded with government grants and diaspora donations. Scholarships were awarded based on need, academic potential, and community involvement. A girl named Maimouna from Gawa, the daughter of a peanut vendor, received a scholarship to study aerospace engineering in Kenya. She would later become the first Burkinabe woman to intern with the African Space Agency. The African Union's summit in Addis Ababa became the stage for Traoré's Pan-African vision. He presented the Ouaga Protocol, a policy blueprint for abolishing child marriage continent-wide. 7 nations signed immediately. Others hesitated, but the spark was lit. "This is not just Burkina Faso's law," Traoré declared. "This is Africa's destiny." Inspired by the movement, girls across Burkina Faso began writing manifestos, handwritten calls for freedom, equality, and education. These were published in a national anthology titled The Daughters' Manifesto, which sold out within a week. One excerpt read, "We are not flowers to be picked and owned. We are seeds to be planted, watered, and watched as we reach the sun." Traoré wept when he read it. In that moment, he knew the revolution was irreversible. With the ban on child marriage in place, Traoré deployed what he called the Education Army, thousands of young, trained educators and health workers assigned to rural zones. Their mission was simple: bring education to the doorstep. Clad in Pan-African green and gold uniforms, they taught literacy under mango trees, handed out solar tablets, and screened health documentaries in open fields. The initiative was named Project Sankofa, invoking the Ghanaian principle of returning to the past to build the future. Recognizing that fathers were often overlooked in the dialogue, Traoré launched the Fathers of the Future campaign. It featured public forums, radio call-ins, and cultural storytelling aimed at reshaping masculinity and fatherhood. In Dugu, an imam tearfully admitted on air that he had once married off his 12-year-old daughter and vowed to protect his granddaughters. The campaign changed hearts across the Sahel. Child marriage had its economic roots. Dowries were survival tactics. Traoré tackled this by launching Micromothers, a microfinance initiative for single mothers and widows. In Banfra, a widow named Aissatou used her loan to start a shea butter cooperative. Within a year, she employed 40 women and sent every one of their daughters to school. School enrollment skyrocketed, but schools were not ready. Traoré declared a state of educational emergency. Military engineers built modular classrooms. Retired teachers were recalled. University students were given tuition reductions in exchange for teaching in rural areas for a year. In 3 months, 12,000 new classrooms stood across Burkina Faso. At an ECOWAS summit, a 16-year-old girl named Aminata gave a speech titled Africa, See Me? She spoke of dreams deferred and futures stolen. She quoted Lumumba and Nkrumah. Her voice shook, but she never faltered. When she finished, there was silence, then thunderous applause. Nigeria's president embraced her. Ghana's prime minister promised to review child marriage laws. To ensure sustainability, Traoré created the Guardians Pact, a community-level monitoring network. Local leaders, teachers, imams, and youth volunteers signed on to track at-risk girls and intervene early. It wasn't government surveillance, it was grassroots guardianship. Every guardian wore a red sash and carried a log book. The message was clear: every girl mattered. Traoré, alongside leaders from Ghana, Mali, Guinea, and Senegal, signed the Black Star Alliance, a coalition of nations vowing to eliminate child marriage by 2030. It came with data sharing, policy alignment, and regional funds for girls' education. The world watched. For once, Africa led. Traditional griots composed songs of the girls' revolution. Drums beat in the markets. Children sang verses in local dialects. The daughter is rising. Her books are her dowry. Her mind is her shield. Even skeptics were moved by culture's embrace. Not all were pleased. Extremist groups on the borders began targeting education units. A school in the east was burned. A young teacher was kidnapped. Traoré stood firm. We will mourn. We will bury our martyrs. Then we will build 10 more schools in their honor. Operation Tiwara was launched to protect the education corridors with special forces trained in non-combatant security. At the United Nations, Traoré nominated Fatimata Diallo, the girl whose wedding was stopped, to address the General Assembly. Now 18, fluent in French, English, and Fulani, she walked the halls of power with grace. She ended her speech by saying, "Burkina Faso gave me back my childhood. Now I give my voice to Africa." Let no girl ever be sold for survival again. The hall rose in a standing ovation. If this recent but true life story interests you, subscribe, share, and follow for more full multi-chapter stories updated weekly.